Marcus Aurelius had a philosopher on his payroll not to teach him wisdom, but to insult him every morning. Before the emperor put on his crown, this man reminded him of every flaw, every weakness, every way he could fail. Most people would fire that man. Marcus gave him a raise. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why the people who dislike you hold information about yourself that your closest friends will never give you, and how to extract that intelligence to become sharper, stronger, and harder to break. Your friends are protecting you from yourself, and that's the problem. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius, associate with people who are likely to improve you. He didn't say comfortable people. He didn't say agreeable people. There's a reason for that. Think about the last time a close friend told you something genuinely hard to hear. Not a soft "you could maybe try this," but a real, uncomfortable truth. Probably rare. Now think about the last time an enemy, a critic, a rival said something cutting about you. You remember it word for word, don't you? Years later. You can still feel it. Friends operate inside what psychologists call the positive illusion bias. They unconsciously inflate their perception of you because their emotional investment in you requires it. Your enemies have no such investment. They see your actual behavior, your actual output, your actual reputation in the world unfiltered. They have no reason to soften the signal. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. Criticism from enemies reveals your blind spots faster than any self-reflection ever will. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the parts of ourselves we refuse to see, the traits we suppress or deny. Jung's insight was brutal. Whatever you most strongly reject in other people is almost certainly something that lives in you. Now apply that outward. When an enemy mocks you for being arrogant, or weak, or inconsistent, before you dismiss it, ask yourself why it landed. Theodore Roosevelt's political enemies called him reckless, impulsive, a man who acted before he thought. He privately admitted in his diary that he had to fight those exact tendencies every single day of his life. The enemies weren't wrong. They were just early. Self-reflection is filtered through ego. You control the narrative you tell yourself. But your enemies are observing you from the outside with motivated attention. They're actively looking for your weaknesses because it serves their interests. That makes them your most rigorous auditors. The Stoics called this the view from above, seeing yourself as others see you. Your enemies already have that view. You just have to learn to read their reports. The man who knows his enemy's grievances knows his actual reputation, not the one he imagines. Nietzsche wrote that a man's greatness can be measured by what it takes to bring him down. But before you can know that, you have to know what people are actually aiming at. Machiavelli, stripped of all the dark mythology around him, made one genuinely useful observation: the people who oppose you know your weaknesses with a precision that allies never develop, because opposing you is their full-time occupation. Abraham Lincoln kept a file. He called it assassination letters, correspondence from people who hated him, who wanted him gone, who detailed his failures in vicious terms. He read every single one. Not to wallow. To calibrate. He cross-referenced the recurring complaints. Where multiple enemies landed on the same criticism independently, he treated it as data. Your imagined reputation is constructed from the feedback loop of people who like you. Your actual reputation, the one that affects how the world responds to you, whether you get the deal, whether you're trusted, whether people follow you, is shaped by what everyone sees, including those who are hostile to you. Your enemies are essentially running a continuous 360-degree review of your public self. Ignoring it is like flying a plane with half the instruments covered. Hostility forces you to develop strength. Comfort creates dependency. Epictetus was a slave. He had no friends in positions of power, no network to protect him, no one softening his conditions. What he had was opposition, constant, grinding, indifferent opposition from the world. And he built from it a philosophy so durable that Roman emperors read it 2,000 years later. Contrast that with the sons of wealthy senators who had every advantage, every friend, every connection, and vanished from history entirely. The mechanism isn't suffering for its own sake. It's that resistance is the only thing that builds capacity. A muscle with nothing to push against doesn't grow. Neither does a man. Psychologists call this post-traumatic growth, the documented phenomenon where people who face genuine adversity, including social hostility, often develop higher levels of emotional intelligence, resilience, and self-awareness than those who lived in protected environments. Your enemies provide resistance. Resistance, when engaged with consciously rather than resented reflexively, becomes training. The Stoic term is premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. Your enemies are just making that practice unavoidable. How you respond to an enemy reveals your actual character, not the version you perform for friends. Viktor Frankl, in the most extreme conditions imaginable, stripped of everything, observed that the one freedom no external force could remove was the choice of how to respond. He watched men in concentration camps become animals and others become saints. The difference wasn't background, wasn't intelligence, wasn't physical strength. It was the relationship each man had with his own reaction. Your enemies are essentially running a stress test on that relationship. How you behave when someone is actively working against you, when someone publicly criticizes you, when someone takes credit for your work or undermines your reputation, that behavior is more revealing than anything you do when surrounded by people who support you. Tolstoy's characters almost always reveal their true nature not in moments of ease but in moments of opposition. He understood something most people spend a lifetime avoiding: the enemy is not the obstacle to self-knowledge. The enemy is often the path. Under social threat, the prefrontal cortex, the rational, deliberate part of your brain, partially goes offline. What's left is closer to your instinctual character. Friends rarely trigger this response because they're not threatening. Enemies do. Which means your reactions to enemies are some of the most honest data you will ever generate about who you actually are under pressure. A man who wants to know himself needs to pay attention to those moments, not to justify his reactions, but to study them. Here's what we covered. 1. Your friend's loyalty is also their limitation, they're filtering the signal to protect you and themselves. 2. Your enemy's hostility is actually their honesty, they have no incentive to spare you. 3. The recurring complaints of multiple independent critics are data, not just noise, they're mapping your actual reputation. 4. Opposition builds what comfort cannot, it forces capacity. And 5. How you respond to enemies is a mirror that shows you your real character, not the edited version. The Stoics didn't fear enemies. They used them. That's the practice. If this hit something real for you, subscribe. We drop one of these every Tuesday and Friday, no motivation content, no life hacks, just ideas that make you harder to shake. Hit the bell if you want to make sure you don't miss one.